Hola! Welcome to this lesson video for the quadratic formula. And there in the blue, yes, it's kind of a big deal. Our learning target for this lesson is to solve quadratics for the roots using quadratic formula, but also to know when and when you cannot use the formula. So first I want to ask you, what if I give you this guy to factor? Would we factor with X puzzles or divide and slide? And hopefully you recall from our previous quiz, I would actually factor this guy with an X puzzle because there's no number in front of my X squared. So the 2 would go on top and the 7 would go in the middle. And we want to know what numbers add to the top 2 and multiply to 7. Well, hang on a second. The things that multiply to 2 are 1 and 2. Is there any way to get a 7 out of those numbers? Ooh, yikes. No. So this guy, we can't factor him, okay? He's not factorable. So my next question to pose to you is, what if I change the directions from factor to solve and I set him equal to 0? What would I do since I can't factor and, get groups to set equal to 0 and solve for x? What would I do? I'm stuck in a pickle. Well, that's what we have the quadratic formula for. You can always use the formula to solve quadratics for the roots, but it's especially useful when you can't factor it, okay? So this guy over here is the quadratic formula. And I usually sing it in class, so yes, I will sing it on the video, okay? So here's how the song goes. X equals opposite of B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC, B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. All right, so there you go, my lovely quadratic formula song. But like I said, we could use this on any quadratic to solve for the roots, but there's one stipulation. You have to be in standard form where you see the equal 0. If you don't, then you do not know the ABC values and you would need to fix it to where you do see equal 0. So that's the only stipulation. So we talked about it, but let's make sure we remember, what do we use the quadratic formula for? I just illustrated it just a few seconds ago. We use it to solve for the roots, solve for the roots, especially though when we can't factor. So we could use it to solve any quadratic, but we have to use it when we can't factor. Now the second thing, quadratic formula means it can only be used on quadratics. And quadratics are in the x squared family. So if you have a power bigger than x squared, you're not a quadratic anymore, you're something else, so you couldn't use the formula. So things like the first one and the last one are quadratics, so we could use the formula. But because of this x cubed in the middle one, he's cubic, he's not quadratic anymore. So he couldn't qualify for our formula. And finally, the last thing to know is, once you're in standard form, so once you see the equal 0, how do you identify ABC values? A is whatever's in front of the x squared, so there's understood to be a -1, so that's my A number. B is what's attached to x, so that's 3. And C is the constant, so now this guy, C, is -10, because it was -10. All right, so let's actually look at a couple. How do we even do this quadratic formula thing? Well, remember the first stipulation was you have to see equal 0, which I don't here. So we need to make a 0 by subtracting that 4. So we're really looking at x squared plus 7x minus 4 equals 0. So if you're the type of person that likes the steps, the first thing you'd want to do is to get equals 0. Now that I see the equals 0, I can identify A, B, and C. So 1 is my A, 7 is my B, negative 4 is my C. So that would be the second step. Identify A, B, and C. So I'm ready to plug this into the song. So you ready? I'm going to sing it to you again. X equals opposite of B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC. B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Okay? So all I did for each time I sang a letter in the song, I replaced the letter with the number, its respected number. Okay? So once you plug in, okay, that's the third step. After you identify, plug in. The next thing I need to do is to clean up under my radical house. Okay? Now, neat and orderly is a key to the quadratic formula problems. It may take an extra 2 seconds, but it's worth it that at each step you rewrite the whole fraction, so that way you don't get lost. So I'm trying to figure out what's under my square root house. So you could type all this in minus doing the square root house in your OGT calculators, but I'm going to break it up. 7 squared is 49 minus, now I'm going to automatically bring down the minus and think of my 4 as positive. So what is 4 times 1 times negative 4? That would be a negative 16. So I'm subtracting a negative 16. Now, you may recall that that's actually adding a positive. So when I do my next step, negative 7 plus or minus 49 plus 16 would be 65. Okay, all over 2. Now, to finish up the problem, I've cleaned up under my radical. I've got it down to a single number. The next thing would be to simplify that radical, if I can, through a factor tree. But lucky for us, 65 is 5 and 13, and there are no pairs. So these are my roots. I have 2 of them from the plus or minus sign. Okay, so quadratic formula really isn't that bad. It's just some tedious algebra mixed in. All right, but let's look at this guy. I'm going to skip a few examples and jump to this example D. Remember the first step? Equals to 0. Ha! That's already done for me, so I don't have to worry about it. The second step was to identify A, B, and C. So my A number is a 2. All right. My B number is negative 4. And oh, yeah, C is 5. So I'm going to plug it into the song. Yes, you get to hear it one more time. I know you are jumping up and down. But before I sing it, remember it's an opposite of B. So my B is already negative. That opposite of B doesn't mean negative number all the time here at the first place. It means take the opposite. So if it's a negative 4, we're going to start with a positive 4. Okay? So now I'm going to sing the song. X equals opposite of B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4AC. B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. Alrighty. So now the third step was to clean up under the square root house. So let me take the extra 2 seconds and rewrite my fraction so it's all neat and orderly. 2 times 2 is 4 at the bottom this time. Negative 4 squared. So negative 4 times negative 4, 16. Automatically bring down my minus. And think about 4 times 2 times 5. Well, that's going to be 40. Okay? So x will equal 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 40. Ooh, that's negative 24. Now I think it's the 4th step. I'm forgetting my numbers now. Maybe the 5th step is to clean up under the radical house. To simplify under the radical house. So how am I going to do that? Well, ooh, this time I have a negative. So let me come over here so I have a little bit more room. Again, let me take the 2 seconds to rewrite it. Because it's a negative, I have to pull an I out. Okay? But then I need to factor 324, see if I have any pairs. Maybe it'll be more exciting this time. 2 and 12, 6 and 2, that's a 6. Ooh, that's a bad 6. And 2 and 3. Woo! There's a pair of 2s. So what does that mean? 2 comes out or 2 stays in? A 2 will come out with my I. So x will equal 4 plus or minus 2I square root of, what's left? A 3 and a 2. So multiply them. Square root of 6 over 4. Now you may be thinking, whoo, I think we're done. I think we're done. But sorry to be a party pooper. Don't mean to burst your bubble. We've got one last thing to consider. These numbers that are outside, 4, 2, and 4, what can you tell me about them? Hopefully you're telling me that you can divide them all by a 2. So that's exactly what we've got to do. We've got to reduce this fraction. So x will equal 2 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 would turn to a 1, but that's understood, over 2. Okay, so that would be our final answer. Notice how the 6 did not change. It could not be divided because it was underneath. Okay, so that's what we want as our final answer. Now, if you have your homework worksheet to finish up, here's problem 11. I'll help you get started. It's talking about a rectangular field. Okay, and we know the area of this field is 75 feet squared. We also know that we want the width of the field to be 3 feet longer than the length of the field. So our width depends on whatever the length is. Once I know the length, because the width is 3 feet longer, I just add 3 to get my width value. So obviously the width is the longer side. So my width depends on my length. Well, why don't I arbitrarily pick a length, say x, then that would mean my width would be x plus 3, because it'd be 3 more than whatever x is. So since we're talking about a rectangle and area, if you recall, the area formula is length times width equals area. Well, I know I let my length be x, I let my width be x plus 3, and I let my area, I know that it was 75, okay? So if I look at this guy, then I could distribute here, and to get rid of parentheses, I would get x squared plus 3x equals 75. Well, treat this guy like you're going to do the quadratic formula. You know, get your equals 0, and then label ABC, and then go through the whole jazz. So I'm going to leave this for you to finish for the homework. Okay, and at least you know how to get started. If you forget, the homework was 1 through 11 odd, and the even are extra credit. So keep learning, and I will see you next time, guys. Adios.